Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, friends, colleagues, listeners, and anybody new to the podcast. Today, we've got well-known lady of logistics, Leslie Cripps. So she's joining us from India, and that in itself is a little story which we'll get round to. So, Leslie, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast show. Really appreciate it.
No, thanks, Chris. Thank you for inviting me. It's a real pleasure.
Absolute pleasure. So, Leslie, just to let everybody know where you're talking from.
Well, I'm talking from my apartment in Gurogong, in the outskirts of Delhi, where I arrived into Delhi on the 14th of February, on Valentines Day. So, obviously, showing my love for India at that time, and now, unfortunately, from the 21st of March, been on lockdown ever since. So. A little bit isolated, but very secure and safe, I'm pleased to say.
Good. My goodness me, that's a Valentine's gift and a half, isn't it? Normally it's roses and some chocolates.
Yeah, certainly. But I decided that India was obviously going to be my passion.
Okay.
And it's a lovely place. It is a lovely place.
Oh yeah. Beautiful country. Now, obviously, one of the reasons why you're in India is because of your current role, which is sales director for CargoFlash. Yes. So if you just want to give us a little bit of background as to what CargoFlash is and what your objectives and targets are.
Okay, well, my role within CargoFlash is to develop to develop the IT network for the company. From my experience working for previous airlines and operations, I found that within our industry, the IT systems aren't there, to be honest with you. They don't actually deliver what the airline requires. And we're so far behind in the industry, I felt it was a good time to join CargoFlash. And from that point, I'm there to help develop new products with them. We have a wonderful team and who are very innovative, and also market the product worldwide, but also with my understanding of processes within the industry to help with the product and going forward. So,
okay, right, good. We were talking with somebody, I think it was last week or it might even have been at the weekend, and they said that if you look at IT and digitalization and automation and all the good stuff that everybody else is talking about, it's almost like a common enemy of cargo because they're so frightened of it and they don't get involved in it quick enough. Now, we've also had some other platform representatives on the show, and they also have started to come around. I'm really pleased. Anyhow, they've started to come around to the fact that things need to be quicker and not necessarily wait for a full rollout. So it's always better to keep people involved and show the development and get more people involved other than just super users, which has become a term where people have suddenly transferred from being really good operational agents to super users, and then they seem to be the people that everybody goes to instead of having it inbred in everybody's DNA and everybody understanding the reasons why. So I understand CargoFlash have got a nice building block modular option, which makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it certainly does. And they have a complete bouquet of products which covers the full processes from the sales and reservations right to the operational side, and obviously for reporting structure. But also they have an e-commerce product which is currently in use, which is an area I think a lot of airlines are now reevaluating and looking at. I think before, airlines potentially have been quite hesitant and not tread on toes as such. But, you know, the likes of Amazon, Prime, they're actually doing this by themselves on their own flights. So the airlines have got to readdress their whole processes and potentially their new business modules.
Yeah. No, I agree, Leslie. And I think, to be honest, most people, apart from the integrators and the parties that specialise in e-commerce, they don't really know what to do. They don't know which area to get involved in, who to use as partners, how to have front to end stream, first mile, last mile. It's very complicated for them. So hopefully one day they'll get it right and give a little bit of competition, and also maybe some of the regulators will also start clamping down on mail to cargo and cargo to mail, and how it can suddenly change its description.
Yeah.
But that's for another day. So now, what I want to talk to you about, and this is, sometimes we get messages or questions, and some of the listeners say, what's it like for a lady in logistics? I feel that people should say, what's it like for an old man in logistics as well? But my answer would be, at the end of the day, it's tough for everybody, especially now. But I think if people are devoted enough and care enough and are good enough, then it's not a matter of which gender, which age, colour, anything like that, or where you come from. It's such a global business, and it's a business that, wherever you do something around an aircraft, it's being done the same way or similar everywhere else around the world. So if we take your career, you started off in SQ. We won't say when. I'm a gentleman at heart, so we won't say when. But you started off in SQ, and a well-known character, God bless him, Barry Gibson.
Yeah.
So how did you get into the business, Leslie? What made you decide, right, I'm gonna?
To be honest with you, I think like everybody, you fall into it. At that time, there was no education, no classes, no university courses. There's nothing to state for logistics at the time, to be honest with you, when I was 5 years old. So,
so you didn't rush into it?
No, I didn't rush into it. So I basically saw an advert. Somebody brought home a paper. I saw an advert and basically applied for it. But what I did, although I was outside the industry at the time, was I decided to do my homework. And I think everybody needs to do their homework when they're going to work for a company. And I learnt everything from every destination that the airline was flying to, for completely all the different aircraft types, to the network, right the way down to the size of Singapore and what the population was. And bless him, Barry Gibson said to me, "Okay, can you now name the captains, please?"
No, fair play to him. But those were the days. I remember doing an exercise where a consultant asked the group, name the best piano, name the best something or else, name the best airline. And those were the days when everybody used to say SQ. And people said Steinway instead of Yamaha and all these sort of things. But it was funny that everybody that said SQ, there was less than 15% of them had ever flown on SQ. So the marketing and the perception was such that it was such a high value product. It was brilliant.
But it was a fantastic airline to work for. And the thing was, it was so good that nobody left. So you couldn't progress within the company itself, which is a real shame. But actually, which is obviously why not when I took my next role. But from a learning point of view, I had every course going, from dangerous goods to livestock to operations to the IATA statistics to IATA rating. So, as an education, Singapore Airlines was a great, basically molded me, I would say, from what I am today.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I had almost, 28, 29 years with Lufthansa, and I would never, ever, ever have a bad word said about them, and especially from the perspective of training and development, they were second to none. And I think those standards way back then were very different than what people are getting now. And it's something that I'd like to come to a little bit later on, because obviously we're going through this, this terrible situation now, and I feel so sorry for so many people that are going to have their livelihoods and they're just normality displaced because of no fault of their own. The amount of people that are going to be made redundant and lose jobs, in the next few months is going to be phenomenal. It's going to be
devastating, absolutely devastating. Yeah.
And I just think there's something that the industry could actually do. I don't know through who or how people could support it. But I think it's something that should be done for all those people, so that for the next 2 years or 3 years, at least, that they get the opportunity to stay associated with the industry and maybe have free access to certain training courses, so they can keep their skills base up, and keep their licensing going if it's necessary, but so that they still feel associated to something, and they keep, you know, getting regular news or something, so that, you know, one day, and hopefully not in the too distant future, when things start to ramp up and people are more confident enough to fly, that those people are the first to be invited back into the business.
I totally agree with you. I think that's something that we should do. I think that's something the industry should do.
And you know, whether it's IATA, whether all the representative bodies, I think, should get together and provide a platform so that people can go on if they were registered as being in the industry and displaced. And also to occupy their time a little, you know, keep a bit of structure in there as well. So I think that would be great. It's
also giving somebody so they've got motivation so they can go forward, because as you know, the industry changes so quickly. So you can feel out of it. You know, you're out of it for a year or so, and you can feel like you're behind. When you come back into it. So it's constantly changing. So certainly something, say IATA or TIACA, or, you know, somebody puts a training platform particularly for people that are looking for new opportunities within the industry, or to keep their training up to date. Certainly.
No, I agree, Leslie. And, you know, so many people, and it's a fantastic industry. And, you know, all of us, we've all got to travel, see different cultures, work in different countries. It's an incredible industry, but a lot of people do say also it's very fickle, because you're popular and well known while you're in the industry, but as soon as you step out of it, you know, you're forgotten very quickly.
Unfortunately,
but it's the same. You know, that's the same everywhere, which is why we've got to do crazy things when we can, so that we're always in people's memories. So now, as far as memories are concerned, so you moved from SQ to Martinair.
Yeah.
And how did you find that? How did you find that?
I wanted to get into sales, to be honest with you. After being operations and reservations, I wanted to get into sales. And I got into sales with Martinair. Martinair gave me that opportunity. And my mentor then, Mr. Malcom Crow. Who was who's a real character in the industry. Yeah. And a lot of people will know him. Always with his white jacket on the United Kingdom Air Cargo Club, you know, on the ladies' night. So, and he was a great mentor as well from the sales side of point of view. And he gave me the chance, and from that I developed the product and increased the business within Martinair. And Martinair is a great family company as well. I've got very fond memories working for Martinair. It was a family. It was just a shame the way it went, to be honest with you. Obviously being taken back under the wing of, is it KLM Air France in the end? Yeah. Identities get diluted. And then you move to Chapman, which is very topical for the moment because of all the charter business that's going on. Yeah. Everybody wondered why I left Martinair. I went to Chapman's, and it's like everything. It was a new challenge for me. And I needed a new challenge at that time. And I joined Chapman Freeborne. I don't know whether these things follow me, but I joined Chapman Freeborne when the tsunami happened.
Yeah.
And that was a huge learning curve. And I had to learn very, very quickly. It was either the sink or swim process at that time. So I was educating myself on aircraft types, on airports, on runway lengths, on equipment, you know, whether the airport had fuel. These are things that people don't think from a schedule point of view, but actually there's a lot involved to it. And it was a real eye-opener for me.
And how you have to pay for it.
Yeah, and how you pay for it. And after being in the industry, which at that time was 18 years, going into Chapman Freeborne was a completely new eye-opener and a complete different education. And actually more knowledge was coming in through the door to me, and I could see new ways of improving and actually developing products within the company itself, not just on the humanitarian side, but on the oil and gas sector.
Yeah.
Where I developed their oil and gas product for them.
And it's one of the things with charter operations is, you know, the world and the map of the world is big when you look at it. But one thing I found, the older you get, the smaller it actually is once you travel around a little bit. But in charter, you get to see and get involved in areas that most people don't even know where the airports are, let alone been there or done business there. So it's a very different dynamic, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's totally different. And in the same respect, I was looking at ways of within the organisation, the way we could improve and offer, for example, services added value. For example, giving consultancy on certain airfields, types of aircraft that could actually land in those airfields, what equipment they have, what equipment they would require, especially for the oil and gas companies at the time. Because if you had basically sorry, put my teeth back in, a disaster of some point, of an oil spill, for example, then you want to react as quickly as possible. But if the airfield closest to the disaster zone is not big enough to take the types of aircraft that are required, then the time constraint is going to cause huge problems and huge as well loss of revenue to the companies involved. So it's taking it that extra step, not just doing the chartering, but giving them an insight to what potential requirements are.
No, good. And who gave you that little bit of extra polish or that little bit of support or motivation in Chapman?
We had a good team. I mean, Shohei Zunion he's a great guy, Shohei. And Carol Norman is an exceptional woman, very tough lady. And Chris Chapman was a wonderful man who obviously owned the company at the time. I believe he's down in the south of France, probably enjoying a glass of wine.
And why not? Why not?
Yeah, why not? Sounds like a good idea. But from the oil and gas side, I actually could see within the industry at that time, going from conferences, how at that time the oil and gas was developing and the products were developing. So I asked the company if we could join the Energy Industry Council, where I educated myself on the subject, and I was in the end I was the vice chair on the Southern Committee, the Energy Industry Council in the UK.
Oh, Leslie, well done. I didn't realise that. That's brilliant.
Yeah,
that's brilliant.
Yeah. So and then you can speak to the customer. You understand the product.
Yeah, that's why that's so important. Yeah.
Yeah, you understand what the problems are, the problem areas are. There's something very simple my grandfather told me, is that if you know the product and you know your customer, then you can take the sale forward.
Yeah, no, so important, and especially now more than ever. Now, then from Chapman, you then went to Saudi.
Yeah,
so that was a huge change, and obviously we worked together there, and I'll never forget a few situations that we were both in, which we won't cover, but it was a big adjustment, and a big sort of just a big experience. So it was, but especially for ladies.
I think when I joined Saudi, it was as the UK manager, cargo manager, and to be honest with you, I was getting a lot of remarks. Wow, they've employed a female, but at the end of the day, it was the Saudis that employed me. They looked at my track record and decided they wanted myself on board. After being in the UK for 8 months, I could see there was a lot of links, basically breaks in processes.
Yeah.
And communication, especially communication. And as I always say, if you know the acronyms KISS.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Been a while, I would imagine, since you're stuck there for a few months.
Yeah, it has. But keep it simple, stupid. But from that point of view, I sort of changed a lot of the processes and made sure that we had regular meetings, not just with the operational staff, but also with the passenger, to ensure that we could utilise our payloads and turn the operation around in 8 months. So from there, I was asked by the head office to go to Europe. Brussels, where I was told that I would never be able to change anything in Brussels at that time.
Yeah, no, I remember Brussels very, very well. And during your time, so we're following a theme here of mentors and coaches and people that it's so important when you're moving through your career that there's always somebody that's either taught something or you learn from, or whatever the reason. It's important to to have these people around. And who would you like to name in Saudi as we're going through the Hall of Fame at the moment?
Okay, I would say probably, Peter Scholten.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was a real character.
Yeah.
He was very, very tall. Yes, very tall.
He really is a character, though. Yeah.
He's a great character. But the one thing I liked about Peter, he was straight. He was straight with you. He told you exactly what you needed to hear from the point. If you didn't have your facts, then you had a problem. Don't say something if you haven't got anything to back it up with without factual proof.
Yeah.
And I respected that, and if he had a problem with me, he'd say something. I said, okay, fine, I'll come back to you. Came back to him, told him. He says, okay, no problem. So, he was a tough character, but he did a lot actually within Saudi in developing, especially the flower market for them at that time.
He was instrumental, wasn't he, with getting the name better known and more respected. But coming back to what you were saying though about going to Saudi, I've got to say as well, I lots of people say, oh, why and what's it like, but I've got to say I probably learnt more in Saudi than anywhere else, and met some lovely people, and it was an incredible experience. Now then we move on to Air Astana.
Yes, I took a trip to Kazakhstan.
Yes, which is another well-known top 10 destination for anybody coming into the industry. So, and obviously with the weather conditions.
Well, it was a mix of weather conditions. It depends where you are. Kazakhstan, I don't think people realise how big Kazakhstan is. It's huge. It's huge. It's got different time zones within the same country. I was based in Almaty, which is towards the China border. So everybody was telling me, oh, you're going further and further, next time you're going to be in China or in Hong Kong. But no, the reason I joined Air Astana was because I could see a huge opportunity. If you actually look at Kazakhstan as a country, if you go anywhere within 6 hours, east or west or up or down, you're within Europe, India, Russia, China. So from a transit point of view, it's perfect.
Yeah,
absolutely perfect. And I could see a huge potential, and that's something which I worked on while I was there. But also, in the same respect, was to develop their product and to increase their increase their business and increase their tonnages, which we did while we're there. To be honest with you, I did while I was there. I changed processes, but it was amazing actually. What still needs to be done. We all talk about e-freight and e-airway bill, but basically within the facilities, they still need to update their systems, which are behind the times at the moment. But actually, from an airline point of view, they were driving things forward. And from my point of view, they were investing in new types of aircraft, which is another reason why I parted ways with Air Astana. But it was a great company to work for while I was there, and I could see huge potential for it. And I believe the potential is still there. It's definitely still there for them.
Yeah, the whole industry. Obviously, the only problem now is this contraction and being ready to reboot. And I think being realistic although there's been good news yesterday and today about the steroid treatment that's been identified by Oxford University with regards to helping people that are suffering on the serious end of the CV-19. But I do think, Leslie, that the industry is going to have to be a lot more agile and resilient if this second wave starts popping up in so many places where, through economic pressure, we've had to we've had to open up. And I think the amount of information and communication that's necessary to make people less anxious and less worried, but also being prepared and ready for it as part of whether people call it the new normal or not. But it's something that, you know, everybody needs to be aware of. Now, with that in mind, so many people are going to be displaced. And like when we started, I feel so sad for them. And, you know, the younger generation now, you know, there's a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of things that they've got to contend with. In this industry, the same as others, you know, people get used to the fact that maybe you might change jobs, you might lose a job, you might whatever, but there's always something there. Whereas now, people are all being put into this particular corridor through no fault of their own, and they're not sure where it's taking them to, or what's going to be at the end of the corridor, or even what sort of opportunities. And I think a lot of people will be thinking they've got to try different industries, which is lucky for all those industries, because the people that leave ours, you know, they go with great training, regulatory criteria, great focus on safety and security, you know, they're quality driven. So I think any other industry that takes people from our industry will see a difference. But as a lady in logistics, even at this moment in time, what this industry has given to you, and we've just gone through a few chapters there, so it's like the life and times of Leslie Cripps through the aviation industry. But seriously, and also mentioning characters that are in there, it's a nice storyline, Leslie. So, you know, what advice would you give to any youngsters out there now who are seeing for the first time how important cargo is with the supply chain, how important cargo is to keep the whole global wheels turning in the way that we assume? You know, everybody gets up in the morning and they've got cereal, they've got food, they've got clothing, they've got everything, you know, but now people are realizing how important cargo is, you know, in making sure that all those nice things, necessities, and just things that are taken for granted, how important it is that they keep coming. Otherwise, there'll be even more anxiety. So what advice would you give to somebody now who's thinking of getting into the industry, even with the pending problems?
I think this industry is a fantastic industry. I don't think no day's the same. That's the one thing that's for sure. It's never boring.
Yeah.
It's challenging. It can be stressful, but it's never boring. It's such a complex industry in some respects that you're always learning and you're always being educated and you're always finding something new.
Yeah.
And I think if you put the effort in and the drive, and you've got the drive, you can achieve anything within this industry. We need to remember that, obviously, you rightly said, you know, it's global, and within this global arena that we're in, we need to move medicines, we need to move foodstuffs, we need to flowers. Flowers don't just appear in your shop. They might come from Colombia, or they might come from Kenya, you know. So if without the logistics and without the flights moving, you know, we're not going to be able to go down the road and get our mother, you know, flowers for Mother's Day. Potentially we could, a bunch of daisies or something, but you wouldn't get the beautiful roses that you get from Kenya, or the carnations you get from Colombia. So from that respect, you know, it's fantastic, but it's not just about moving. It's just not just about moving products. It's about moving livestock. You know, you're moving livestock. You're moving 70-ton generators on Antonovs. You know, you're moving different types of aircraft. I mean, for example, I love the 225. I had the privilege to charter the 225 from South America, from Houston down to South America, to Brazil, and it just gives you a great achievement. You know, it's the first time the aircraft had landed in South America. I mean, I think the heaviest piece that she's ever carried is one piece 190 tons.
That's amazing.
Mira. She has a payload of 250 tons, that one aircraft, which is fantastic. I mean, you get the other types of aircraft, the Antonov 124, you know, 150 ton payload. I mean, these aircraft are beasts, and they're workhorses. And when you look at the history behind them as well, I mean, as you know, I don't know if you know that Mara was differently initially built to move the Russian space station. So that was why she was needed. Yeah. So when you think of the history to the types of aircraft that we have within, I mean, you know, the combis. I mean, I love the combis. I think the combis will come back.
I was going to say, I think combis would be very useful now.
Yeah, I mean,
and there's
you know,
a few of them.
Martinair used
There's
to
a
have
few of them
combis.
still going.
Yeah, Singapore Airlines used to have combis.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they're an aircraft which are going to come back. I think airlines are now realising what an important part that cargo plays to the industry.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I also think from a digital way that we also need to, and with the current pandemic, we need to now take that step forward. We need to have a paperless society.
100%.
We need to have the paper. If the paper needs to go, it needs to all be digitalised and go forward.
Yeah, 100%. And now, if for no other reason, to get over all the blockers and the barriers and the negative, you know, naysayers, it's important now from the hygiene perspective.
Exactly, and that's another reason I think it's going to move forward faster. I mean, people have been holding on to their legacy systems. I think now that has to change.
Yeah. Yeah, and yeah, 100%. And people have got to be a lot more positive about it. You know, it's so easy. I mean, it's so easy to find things wrong with everything. But if you start looking at, you know, the benefits, it drives you forward. And you know, this term "new normal," I remember when I first started using it, I thought, oh, that's a bit trendy. That makes sense. You know, we need to have a new normal. But I think now it's nobody really knows what the new normal is. So I think people now need to, you know, to focus on you know, planned positives. And let's see what people are doing that's positive, so everybody can start to see something, you know, moving and going forward, irrespective of whether or not there's going to be a second wave. Because if there is, people will be and should be a lot better prepared. I
think process is going to completely change as well. I think companies are going to be looking for GHAs to have clean warehouses.
Yeah.
Ensuring that the staff have the right equipment, the right training. There's going to be a lot of changes, not just with the GHAs, but with the airlines, also with the freight forwarders. I think there's going to be a lot of new requirements out there, and there's potential is there new job opportunities in that respect. Yeah,
but like there's going to be a huge consolidation first before there's any stabilisation and then growth. But the consolidation is what's important, because not just with numbers and with equipment. People have got to collaborate more so that they strengthen the whole core of the business before they start to do anything different. And now's the time to come together, not to be overly competing and causing more problems.
No, we need more data sharing. We need more collaboration, certainly. And that's the only way we're going to go forward in this industry. Otherwise, we're going to be left behind.
Yeah. And one of the things that's going to be difficult to say, especially in this day and age, but realistic pricing. And, you know, people have got to start focusing now on cost plus. Margins matter. They've got to appreciate that the sustainability and the continuity of the business is something that all shareholders and board members and everybody should be looking at, including employees, because you don't want to be, you know, working and thinking everything's great and then, you know, something happens and the company can't survive. So there's a lot of different ways of thinking, which is very difficult to say if you're not affected or if you're not in the numbers, who at this moment in time must be so worried about what they're going to do with their families, their mortgages, and that's why I think the industry now needs to, not that it can change that, because that sort of readdress is necessary, but at least so that they can give them some comfort that they're not being discarded or dumped or thrown away. It's really, really important now that companies keep them involved for the next couple of years, with an almost open books opportunity to come back as the first redraft when things start to get better.
No, I totally agree with you there. And I think we have to look at the positives of this, you know, whatever, to be honest with you, whatever knocks us down makes us stronger. You know, you don't get success without a few failures.
Yeah.
You know, I think we need to be there to support. I think the ideals of IATA, I think they can do something to help individuals and have certain courses running. And in the same respect, and maybe even Tiaka can help in that respect as well.
Yeah, no, I think everywhere that's had displacement, I think they need to, you know, they need to think now, what can they do and how can they do it? Yeah. Leslie, listen, before we finish, what sort of things do you hope now, everywhere, including the industry, but not just our industry, but everywhere, what sort of values or positives do you hope will continue after this first terrible experience of COVID-19?
I mean, it's just an awful situation, and you feel for all the families out there, you really do. And you feel for everybody that's been affected by it. But I think the positives that you can take is actually it's brought a lot of families closer together.
Yeah.
As a rule. I mean, I think families now, unfortunately myself, I don't have that privilege, but I think families, that are living together are getting to know each other and actually having more family time. So I think in that respect, it's been very positive. I think from an industry point of view, I think it's made us sit up. It's made us think. We have to now rethink and readdress. I think we realise now that we've been asleep for far too long. Yeah. And that we now need to address the technology that's there, that's been there. It's not that it's just come out of nowhere. It's been there for years. The passenger side certainly use it, that the cargo side needs to address it and start using it and start going forward. Yeah, and now, as everybody has proven, ICAO, EASA, IATA, everybody, things can be done quickly. Same with on the scientific and medical side, things that would have been expected to take 3, 4, 5, maybe 6 years. Look how quickly things are coming on now, which is an incredible achievement by those areas. But now, as you say, our business now needs to pull itself together, really focus on the things that can be done very, very quickly without all the bureaucracy and administration and like I say, negative bodies that are just blocking things. It's crazy. Leslie, listen, you've had a great travel around the world in the industry, and I'm sure it won't be finished in India. And it's admirable, all the positions and all the companies that you've worked for and where and what you've done and how you've learned the industry. And I'm sure many of the parties that you've named and anybody who knows them will look back fondly on those names. And that's one thing that's important in life, is to be remembered or to have good memories. So I think you're making many, and long may you continue. It's been an absolute pleasure, and look forward to seeing you and speaking with you soon. It's all about having a positive attitude, Chris. And thank you. Yeah, it's great. Thank you. All right, my lovely. Take care of yourself, and thank you very much for coming on. No, pleasure. It's been an absolute pleasure, and it was a pleasure, obviously, when I worked with yourself as well. So I have to say that. Oh, I didn't want to sow any seeds there, darling. But when I was saying, is there anybody who inspired you or helped you? I wonder if she'll say me, but no. But never mind. But we had some good times, so that's good. Yeah. All right, darling. Take care of yourself. Really appreciate it, and well done you. Thanks, Chris. Appreciate it. Thanks.